The audit room was cold. Not the kind of cold that comes from poor ventilation or an overworked AC unit, but the cold that seeps into a room when something irreversible is about to happen. The kind of cold that settles in the bones of everyone present before anyone says a word. Randall Wexler stood at the end of the table, freshly shaven, teeth bright, suit spotless. The kind of man who always looked like he'd just stepped out of a magazine spread on executive success. I'd worked with him for almost a decade. I'd seen the charm. I'd seen the cover stories. I'd also seen the footnotes' quiet discrepancies that never screamed, just whispered. Today, they were silent. "You're great at your job," Randall said, pausing just long enough to draw attention to the pivot. "But you don't have the right vibe." He smiled as he said it. Not sheepish or apologetic. He smirked, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "My name is Mason Kessler. I'm 44 years old. Until 10 minutes ago, I was Senior Vice President of Finance at Wexler Hanover Group, an investment firm managing just under $60 billion in assets. For the past 18 years, I was the man who caught the numbers others missed, the one who asked the quiet questions in loud rooms. I was never the loudest, never the flashiest. But when the room was spinning, I was the one people looked to for gravity. The room spun now. Randall gestured toward the open doorway. A young woman stepped in, tall, bleach blonde, camera ready. She wore a blazer over a graphic tee that read, "Financially Ferocious," and carried a tablet in one hand like it was a clutch purse. She didn't look old enough to remember the 2008 crash, but she smiled like she owned the place. "This is Chloe Bell," Randall said. "She'll be stepping into a new hybrid role, a fresh perspective on finance with a strong digital voice." A fresh perspective. Chloe beamed at the room. No one said a word. I felt the eyes of the Burton team around me, Rita from compliance, Don from internal controls, Marcus from the ops side, people I'd led for years. None of them moved. None of them breathed. They all knew what this was. A coup in designer heels. I stood up. Randall cocked his head, amused. "No hard feelings, Mason. Just a strategic shift." I didn't reply. I reached into my coat pocket, took out my badge, and placed it gently on the table. Not slammed, not thrown, just placed. Then I turned and walked out. Behind me, chaos bloomed. Rita gasped something. Don muttered, "You've got to be kidding." Someone knocked over a coffee cup. Randall's voice tried to rise above the noise, calm and cheery. But I didn't hear what he said. I didn't look back. The elevator ride down from the 43rd floor was silent. Just me, and my reflection in the steel doors. I expected to feel angry, but what I felt was sharper, colder, focused. The kind of clarity I'd only felt once before standing at my father's funeral, realizing the man everyone eulogized hadn't been the man I knew. Outside, the air was wet with late spring heat. I stepped into it like crossing through a membrane. For the first time in 18 years, I wasn't a company man. I was a free man, not unemployed, unleashed. I didn't go home. Instead, I flagged a cab and gave the driver an address I hadn't used in over a year, downtown, south of Canal. Past the construction zones and past the memories. A squat, concrete building with a keypad entrance and steel roll-up doors. A storage facility. Nondescript. Almost invisible. I keyed in the code. The light flashed green. Inside the unit, the air was dry, stale, untouched. My old files were still there. Boxes of archived statements, USB drives, printouts I'd collected over the years and never discarded, things I'd noticed, things I'd chosen not to report. Back then, I thought I was protecting the firm. Now I knew better. I stood there in the stillness and flipped open the first box. "I didn't quit," I said aloud. My voice echoed off concrete walls. I was released. And they don't know what they've just unleashed. The first thing I pulled out of the box was a manila folder labeled Q3 Vendor Review, Internal Use. It was dated 3 years back. A nothing folder, a footnote, the kind of document that gets skimmed, signed, and buried in digital archives. But I remembered it. I remembered the vendor that didn't add up, the one with 5 invoices, each just under the discretionary cap, routed through Randall's approval queue. Back then, I flagged it. Asked him about it directly. His answer had been immediate. Routine R&D services, he said, flashing that practiced grin. Nothing worth getting twisted up over, Mason. Trust me. And I had, because Randall had a Harvard MBA, a boardroom pedigree, and a seat at the table I wasn't invited to. He played squash with Joel Rothman, the chairman's son. Took photos at charity galas. His performance reviews always sparkled. Mine just sat there, perfect but quiet. We were both fluent in the language of finance, but Randall had a dialect tailored for influence. I spoke in decimals. He spoke in optics. I took the folder to the folding table I'd set up in the middle of the unit. The lighting was dim, a single fluorescent buzzing overhead. I opened the file. Vendor name, Morntech Solutions. EIN was listed, but a quick search in the IRS database came up empty. No corporate registration, no tax filings, no trace. The invoice totals across all 5 documents added to $12.8 million. Services billed, digital asset reconciliation, external market testing, and AI optimization licensing. All vague, all plausible sounding, all fake. I pulled out my laptop and opened the encrypted drive I'd kept buried in a second box. Inside were snapshots of quarterly reviews, flagged expense anomalies, and a full chat export from our internal messaging platform before IT had migrated to cloud storage. I didn't have much, but I had enough. One thread caught my attention from 2 years ago, an exchange between 2 junior analysts under Randall's org. Just kicked another invoice to Randall's mystery vendor. You know, the ghost one. Laugh my ass off. Morntech? Is that even real? Who knows? Maybe it's his Cayman retirement plan. They were joking. But the kind of jokes people make when they suspect the truth but don't want to believe it. I cross-referenced the payment trail. The vendor address was a WeWork in Soho. I called the number listed. Disconnected. This wasn't sloppy bookkeeping. This was architecture. I moved to Chloe Bell's social accounts. Her Instagram was public, curated, and loud. Trips to Miami, NFT events in LA. The usual cocktail of staged empowerment and brand deals. But one post, buried between her Finance's feminist reel and a sponsored skincare ad, caught my eye. A rooftop shot. Sunset skyline in the background. She was hugging Randall, arms around his neck, his hand on her waist. The caption: "Some mentors change your life. Number grateful. Number NYC nightlife." Dated 2 weeks before her first day at Wexler Hanover. I stared at the screen for a long time. The facade was crumbling. Fast. I opened my remote access tool and keyed into the admin backdoor that I'd used to troubleshoot Slack outages back when Randall trusted me with infrastructure. The credentials hadn't been revoked. He was too confident, or too stupid. I scrolled through Chloe's channels. Most were fluff emoji-filled threads about brand synergy and optimizing market storytelling. But then I found a private DM between her and Randall. His message was short, blunt. If he talks, we bury him. I felt something shift in my chest. Not fear, not yet, but the kind of stillness you feel when a room suddenly empties and you realize you're the only one who understands what's coming. I copied the message. Then I copied everything. Every invoice, every photo, every chat log. I backed them up twice, one encrypted, one printed. Randall had made a mistake thinking this was still about vibes. It was about evidence. And the numbers never lie, but people do. I started with a burner email, no signature, no metadata trail. The subject line read, "Luxury TikTok finance queen on Wexler Hanover's dime." I attached a zip folder heavily redacted, just enough to whet appetite but not enough to get traced. Screenshots of Chloe Bell posing in the executive suite like it was a fashion runway. In one, she was holding a bottle of vintage champagne with the company logo in the background. Caption: "When your 9-to-5 funds your 5-to-9 number, girl boss, I sent the package to Market Leaker," a Wall Street gossip blog notorious for breaking the kind of stories that made PR departments scramble. 24 hours later, they ran it front-page digital with a headline that read like a warning shot. Influencer CFO shadow seen spending big at Wexler Hanover. Board silent. Chloe's TikTok blew up. Not in the way she wanted. Her follower count doubled in 3 days, but not because of her financial tips. Clips of her sipping cocktails during what should have been business hours were stitched next to duets of real accountants shaking their heads. One creator did a dramatic reading of her corporate card receipts: $4,800 at Cipriani, $2,200 on client spa services, and $600 at a luxury candle store labeled Meeting Ambiance. I watched it unfold from the shadows with a kind of calm disgust. The firm I gave 18 years to was being turned into a joke on platforms where jokes never die. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was corrosive. I sent a second message, this time to Joel Rothman, board chair. No theatrics. Just a PDF labeled Employee Expenditure Review Partial. Inside were blacked-out memos, vendor discrepancies, and 2 lines from Chloe and Randall's Slack exchange, the one about burying me. No reply, not even a bounce back. Silence, I'd learned, was the elite's version of arrogance. They don't answer until they have to. Then, a crack in the wall. 3 days after the article hit, I got a LinkedIn message from a burner account, anonymous display photo, but the name felt familiar. Just the initials, A.D. We set up a secure call. She didn't hesitate. I'm Anna Delgado. I used to be on Randall's FP&A team. I remembered her. Bright, precise, too principled for the way things were shifting. Randall had fired her last spring under the thin excuse of not projecting enough optimism. Now I understood what that meant. She'd refused to fudge numbers. I kept everything, she said. Emails, memos, spreadsheets where they told us to round up quarterly forecasts to maintain momentum. Randall wrote it himself. No one wants a boring quarter. Sweeten the margins. Just a little. She emailed the files before we ended the call. It wasn't just fraud anymore. It was fabrication at scale. I forwarded the dossier to a contact I hadn't spoken to in years. Michelle Tan, senior investigative reporter for the Financial Register. We'd met once at a compliance summit, shared drinks, and war stories. She had the instincts of a bloodhound and the moral backbone of a prosecutor. I kept my name out of it but offered to meet. We sat at a coffee shop on 41st, her eyes scanning every line of the documents while her cappuccino went cold. When she looked up, she didn't smile. This is career-ending stuff, she said. For him, for her, possibly others. That same afternoon, Chloe posted a TikTok smiling, carefree, oblivious, or desperate, maybe both. In the video, she lip-synced to a trending sound and danced in a boardroom, arms spread wide. The caption read, "Old dudes counting receipts like it's 2008. I'm counting vibes." Over 600,000 likes. The next morning, the Financial Register ran the story. Influencer hired as CFO protege amid internal audit concerns. The article named no sources but cited multiple whistleblower files and unverified internal communications. The internet did the rest. Reddit threads lit up. Finance Twitter dissected every expense line item like they were blood splatters in a crime scene. The board couldn't ignore it anymore. By noon, they'd scheduled an emergency meeting, and I wasn't even close to finished. My phone rang at 2:17 a.m. No one calls at that hour with good news. The number was blocked, but the voice wasn't. "You've made your point," Randall said. Smooth and quiet like he was reading from a script written in a cigar lounge. "What do you want?" I stood by the window of the motel room I'd been using as a base. Rain tapped against the glass like a slow metronome. "I want you to feel the floor drop out from under you," I said, "just like you did to me." He didn't respond right away. Just a long breath, the kind someone takes when they're calculating risk. Randall always thought 10 steps ahead, but this time, he'd lost the board, the media, and his grip on the narrative. He had no idea how deep I'd already gone. I hung up without saying anything else. Then I opened the master folder on my encrypted drive. Everything I'd been holding back was now organized, tagged, and zipped. 32 emails, showing pressure to manipulate forecasts. 12 financial statements cross-referenced against vendor wire transfers. 5 corporate formation documents for LLCs linked to offshore accounts, all pointing back to Randall's signature. One of the shell companies was registered to a virtual address in the Bahamas. The registered agent? A firm that specialized in anonymity. Then there were Chloe's expense reports, dozens of them. $3,000 bar tabs tagged as client relations, $1,800 for a silk jumpsuit labeled public branding materials, and a $7,500 team-building retreat that was really just a weekend in Montauk. She had listed Randall as the approving executive on every single one. I compiled everything into a final package and sent it to Michelle Tan with a one-line message, full release, no redactions. By the time the sun rose, the new article was live. Wexler Hanover CFO implicated in financial cover-up shell companies and luxury abuse tied to internal fraud. The SEC picked it up before lunch. Chloe's TikTok went dark. Every post gone. Her Instagram bio changed from finance disruptor to just a blank white space. Randall's office issued a one-paragraph statement about cooperating fully and respecting the integrity of internal processes. The markets responded by slicing 8% off Wexler Hanover's stock by closing bell. At 5:42 p.m., I got a text. No name. Just a number I didn't recognize. You have no idea who you're messing with. It was her. I stared at it for a long time. There was no fear left in me, just the clarity that comes when the fire's already burned everything else away. I forwarded the message to a new thread addressed to 3 inboxes, one at FINRA, one at the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, and one marked Special Investigations at the DOJ. Attached was every piece of evidence, every ledger, every invoice, every correspondence. In the body of the email I wrote, "Let's see how much vibe they've got for federal subpoenas." Then I hit send. Sat back. The news broke at 6:08 a.m., just before the market opened. I was nursing black coffee in the same corner booth at Margot's Diner. I'd been sitting in for the last 3 mornings. The TV above the counter flickered to CNBC. And there he was, Randall Wexler, in sweatpants and a quarter zip, being led out of his downtown loft in handcuffs. 2 federal agents on either side. One of them held a box of files. The camera caught the moment he realized he was being filmed. His smirk flickered, then vanished. The anchor's voice cut in. Former Wexler Hanover CFO Randall Wexler was arrested this morning on charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, and obstruction of justice. The indictment includes detailed evidence of financial manipulation, shell corporations, and misuse of investor funds. More on this story as it develops. I didn't react. I just watched. Let it settle in. 10 minutes later, I got the text from Michelle Tan. They got him. SEC confirms indictment. Chloe subpoenaed this afternoon. By noon, Wexler Hanover's board issued a full apology. A clean press release with tightly packed legal language. We deeply regret the breach of fiduciary responsibility by former executives. We are cooperating fully with all investigations and have reached a preliminary settlement agreement with affected shareholders. Translation: we got caught, and it's going to cost us. A class action suit from shareholders followed within 48 hours. Chloe's name was included in the filing. Every post she'd ever made about disrupting finance became Exhibit A. Her vibes over spreadsheet slogan was quoted in a federal courtroom as evidence of executive negligence. She'd gone from TikTok's finance darling to walking liability in less than 2 weeks. On the 3rd day, I got a call from a 212 number I didn't recognize. A voice I hadn't heard in months came through. "Mason," Joel Rothman said, "the board would like to speak with you. There's an opportunity to return in a more senior capacity. Possibly even a seat at the table." I let the silence stretch. "I appreciate the offer," I finally said, "but it's too late for that." "We made mistakes," he said. "You've been vindicated. Good. Now you can learn from them." Then I hung up. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. The kind of federal chamber that doesn't make the evening news unless the person inside wore a tie worth more than a car. I took a seat 3 rows back from the bar. Behind a column of legal interns and 2 wire reporters, Randall sat at the defense table in a navy suit that didn't quite fit right. Maybe he'd lost weight. Or maybe it just looked wrong on someone who used to dress like the future. He turned once, scanning the gallery. His eyes found mine. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. He looked away first. The hearing moved quickly, procedural stuff. Bail was denied. Too much risk of flight. His lawyer's jaw clenched as the judge read the ruling. I stayed for the whole thing. Not because I needed to see him fall. I already knew he would. I stayed to mark the moment, the formal, legal shift from assumption to truth, from suggestion to evidence. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. Winter was settling in early this year. I walked 2 blocks before stopping to look up at the sky, gray and low like it was holding its breath. He said I didn't have the right vibe. Turns out truth doesn't care about vibes. It just needs proof.